Hello friends and welcome to the Southern Mountain Kitchen. Today we're going to make iced oatmeal cookies. So what you see on my counter is what we're going to use to make the cookie part of this recipe. Later on there will be another counter that shows you basically the stuff to use to make the icing. So we're going to focus on this right now. You're going to have to preheat your oven to 350 degrees because these will bake for anywhere from 10 to 12 minutes when you're doing this. Now mind you, when we mix this up and we get all of these ingredients together, before you can make the cookies, this needs to go into the refrigerator and cool down. I'd leave it in there for at least an hour just to make sure that it solidifies a bit. And let's get started with this. So we're starting out with a half a cup of sugar, 1 cup of brown sugar, 1 cup of unsalted butter, which this basically I just softened up a little bit before I started using it. Next we're going to have 2 large eggs, which are at room temperature. So that way you need to set these out for a little while before we use them. And once we get the eggs in there, I like to break open the yolks just to make sure that they mix in really well before anything else. And then after this, we're going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract to this. And then I'm going to mix this up just a little bit with a spatula just to get it going, because I like this to be a little mixed before my mixer hits it, because I am the king of throwing stuff all over a counter with a mixer. You don't even want to know. I will make a mess. So once we get the mixer in there, we want to beat this for at least 2 minutes or so to make sure everything is really incorporated, but we're trying to get it also soft and fluffy. The cookies we're making, by the way, are going to be softer. These are more cake-like than hard cookies. We want soft cookies that when we bite into them, there isn't all of that crunchy outside to it. We just want something that's really soft and really chewy, and that's what we're going for with this. So we're going to mix this up completely, and when this is done, we're going to head to our dry mix, which once we get the dry mix together, we're going to put these together. So we're going to start out with 2 cups of oats. I'm using instant oats. These are the big kind. If you wanted them pulsed up a little bit smaller, you could put them into like a blender or something and chop them up. We're adding 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, and then we're going to have a half a teaspoon of nutmeg. So this is just basic ground nutmeg. And then I'm going to mix this with a whisk for a while until it's completely together. And you're going to notice that when this really gets mixed, it's going to change color. It's going to start looking darker. And that means you mix the whole thing together. And when this is done, we're going to mix this into our wet mix. Now, we're not going to pour it all in at once. We want to do this like half and half. So that way, when it goes in, it's easier to incorporate. So it's just easier to pour half this bowl into the wet and start mixing and get it kind of like mixed in too, and then bring in the rest so you don't have a lot to where you're really trying to work it to get it together. So like I said, half of it in, mix it up, then bring in the other half and mix it in completely. Now when we get this completely mixed up and everything is just totally the way we want it to be, we're going to put plastic wrap over this, like I said, and put it in the refrigerator. I'd give it a good hour in there. You could probably get away with 30 minutes if you wanted, but you really want this to set up before you try to use it. And the best thing about this is when it comes back from the refrigerator, it literally just, you could use like a cookie scoop and just throw it right onto your baking pan and go, because it's going to be solidified to a point where it's going to set up really nicely. Now this is kind of like a soft wet mix when you're using it here, when you're putting it together. That's why we're refrigerating it, trying to hold it together while it bakes, so that way it stays on the soft side. So go ahead and mix through this. Make sure you scrape the sides of your bowl and the bottom to get all of those ingredients all mixed together. And as you go through this, just pay attention to it to make sure that you get everything pulled into this. And like I said, then we're going to actually refrigerate, because once it all pulls together, it's really obvious you've gotten this all mixed through. It's ready to go to the fridge. Just make sure you put that plastic wrap on top of it so that'll stop it from drying out on top while it's sitting in there. And this is mine coming back from the fridge right here, and it's ready to scoop, ready to use. Best thing about this is when it's colder, it's easier to work with, and as you can see, easy to scoop. So I just took a large pan here, I covered it with some parchment paper, and I'm going to put this in the oven straight that way. Now mind you, like I said before, preheat 350 and make sure that they bake for 10 to 12 minutes. And the best thing about using the parchment paper on this like this, it's easy to clean up. You just basically take off your cookies and you can just toss that away and your pan doesn't get dirtied or whatever. And that's really easy cleanup. So that's a wonderful thing. But we're going to go ahead and do this and get them ready to go into the oven. Now, when they come out of the oven, you definitely need to let these cool for a long time before we get to the icing phase of this. I give them at least 20 minutes because of the fact if you put the icing on the hot cookie, it's just going to run right off of it. So we just want to give it a chance to set up and do its thing. But when you're making these, you're going to get anywhere from 16 to 18 cookies depending on how big you make them, which does a decent haul for cookies. That's not bad at all. And these are mine back from the oven, and I put them all kind of on top of something to cool for a second. And I'm going to move on after this to making the icing that goes on top of these. And icing is really easy. So we have 1.5 cups of powdered sugar. Then to this, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of milk. I used whole milk. And then after that, we're going to have 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla. And then we're just going to stir this together because we really want to make this just work with the milk and the vanilla to pull the sugar in. And this is not going to be a dry icing. This is going to be kind of wettish because what we're going to do is literally set the cookies down into this to get the icing on top of them and just rotate them a little bit. And it needs to be wet for that. But when you set them to the side after you've iced them all, it's going to set up and harden a little bit so that way the icing is stiffer. It's not something that's going to be running all over the place or get all over your fingers when you touch it. It's going to be just basically, if you were making like a sugar cookie and you put icing on it, it's similar to that consistency. So go ahead and keep mixing until there are no lumps left in your bowl. Sometimes with powdered sugar you get lumps. Just use your spoon and work around there until you make sure you get them all out. And as you can see, this is very movable here. This is not like a stiff icing at all. And just take a cookie, sit it down into the icing, and if you don't get enough on, you can take your spoon and just kind of like rotate it over the top of it a little bit to add some more icing on top. And this is basically it. We're just going to work our way through every single one of these and do it the same. So it's really easy to put your fingers in with the cookie and kind of like rotate it back and forth and swirl it a little bit, and you'll get a decent amount of icing on top. But if you don't, use the spoon and let it help you out a little bit and just work your way through all the cookies. Now there's plenty of icing here to do like 18 cookies easily because it worked with mine. And you just basically make sure that there's enough of this icing on. Get them iced, sit them to the side someplace safe so that way you can move around them without hitting them or anything like that, and just let them sit and give them 20 minutes to a half an hour to sit there, and then after that you're ready to eat these. Because the longer they sit, the better that icing sets up, and that way you're ready to roll with this. And eventually, you can store these in a container or whatever. You can put these in the fridge if you want to. That make them last a little longer. And just, this is what you got. This is such a wonderful thing. The best thing about this is these are not hard to make, but they have such a great taste. It's like something that I remember when I was younger, we used to eat these. But, people don't make cookies at home like this so much anymore, but they should. Because sometimes this stuff is so much better than what you buy in the store, because this isn't processed stuff with all kinds of preservatives or mess in it. This is just basically homemade food, and that's what makes it so great to eat, because it's made at home, it tastes great, and it's a heck of a lot cheaper than going to the store and buying something pre-made. And then you can share these with whoever, and this is what mine looked like on a plate when they were done, and I gotta tell you, they had such a great taste. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. And if you get a chance, check out the Southern Mountain Kitchen website, where you can get a free recipe, check out the cookbooks available from the Southern Mountain Kitchen, and if you'd like to, you could order a cookbook at a discounted price, cheaper than Amazon, with shipping that is also cheaper than Amazon. So if you get a chance, check it out, and I hope you have a great day.